If you're wondering why your car insurance is so high, just watch this little film that I made. I damaged the Jag, the bottom of the door. I managed to reverse into a concrete pot, and it's not that bad, but I took it to the local repair shop. I was quoted £1,000. I was a bit gobsmacked, especially when the quote included £331 for paint and materials. I thought, well, that's pretty expensive paint and masking tape and solvents, whatever they use. A misplaced plant pot. I never saw it, but no excuse, it was me that drove into it. If it was my aeroplane, I'd be walking around it before I moved it. But in this case, I failed to see this. Well, this is the quote, £943.20. I won't name the company, but I questioned in particular the £330 for paint and materials, and they justified it by saying, well, you know, we've got insurance, we've got building costs, we've got wages. Now, I've been in business a long time, but I've never included those in the cost of paint and materials, and all those things should go into the cost of labour. I haven't got a huge beef with the cost of labour on this one at all. 9.5 hours at £48 an hour. Well, I suppose that's the sort of going rate these days. But I was rather miffed at this cost of paint and materials, and they didn't like it much, I have to say. They said I can always go somewhere else and get a cheaper job done. But that seems excessive to me. Tell me what you think. It's taking the mickey a bit. I used to repair cars back in the old days. A lot of it was filler and rubbing down. It's a bit different these days. There are some modern methods available, so I'm going to employ a few of those. Fortunately, it won't be a paintless one because the paint is damaged, but I'm going to do my best to get it out and then see whether or not I can simply touch it up or spray the offending area. I asked particularly to try and confine any painting to this ridge line along here. Now, unfortunately, there is a little bit of a dent through that ridge line there, that coach line. The guy said he wanted to spray the whole door and then blend it on the door, the rear passenger door. I didn't want that, and he said he'd be unable to do that. That wasn't what he did. So what I'm going to do, I have a little tab here and a hot melt gun. I'm going to put, I've cleaned this area up so there's no grease on it, and I'm going to use this tab. I'm going to put some hot melt on it there, then stick it on there. I'm going to let it get hard first before I do anything, but then I've got a hammer that I can pull back on that tab to attempt to pull the dent out a bit. We'll see how we get on with that. Well, that's pulled a bit of it out already. I'll persevere with that, and then I believe I need to knock down some of the high areas there. I've got some little neoprene punches and a small hammer to, as you can see under here, there's a line underneath that dent there, which is going to have to be eased out somehow. I've got a smaller one here, which I'm going to try and get in the middle of this dented area there. It's important to try and control exactly where you're pulling the dent from. Let's have a go at this one. Now, there are a choice of ends you can get for this punch. It's a soft plastic. I've chosen one with a very slight convex top, and you don't want to damage the paintwork. You don't want to put any more dents into it, so gently, softly is the way to go. So I'm just going to run along this line at the bottom there to see if I can ease that back. Now, my understanding is there's no hurry in any part of this work. You need to be very careful with everything you do, slowly, rather than trying to rush it.
and doing a Father Ted. If you haven't seen Father Ted doing a paintless repair, I urge you to watch it. He starts off with a little dent in a Cortina, and it ends up with the car looking looking really as if it's been beaten to pieces. I don't want to do that. I think for the time being that will do. I'll just go around the outside of this here. Right, I'm going to have another go at pulling now. In fact, that little dent there on top there is even starting to come out on its own. Fortunately, this peels off very easily afterwards. Well, actually, that's pulled that dent out quite a lot. I'm really surprised how much that's pulled that dent out. Yeah, very pleased with that. I think I'll try this little one above, between the two coach lines now, above here. So before I pull that one, I'm going to work this along this bottom line again now. Every time you pull something, it puts a bit of tension somewhere else. So what you're trying to do is to relieve that tension in the other areas. Looking pretty good. So the essence is to not do more damage than you've already done. Take it slowly. And there's a little tiny dent up here somewhere I can see, which in a minute I may pull, but I need to knock down this area around there first. Right, let's try this little one then. So what I need to do here is work around that little area, knocking it back, and here. It's kind of counterintuitive that you have to start knocking it back the way you've pulled it, but it's to get rid of this bulge, this hump that you get around every dent. Now, I'm a complete amateur at this, I have to say. I have done it in the past, as I said, but never attempted to do something in such a fine way as this without doing damage. In the past, I might have just put a load of filler across that, rubbed it down, and then sprayed it afterwards. But of course, you end up with quite a large damaged area that you have to rub down and finish then. I'm trying to avoid that. So this is a very small one I've put in this time. Probably won't take much to pull it off, but I want to try and concentrate on the centre of this smaller dent. There's a very slight kink in there. Looking through there, sighting it through, which is what I want to try and get out. So I'll use a bigger tab. Now, whilst that one is cooling, I just want to work on some of these high spots I can see as high spots. Surprising how far along that little fold has gone. Oh, that's pretty good. Sounds pretty horrible, doesn't it? So that worked quite well, but again, I just need to work around the outside of that to knock back the higher, what might be the high areas. I'm loving this because it's working. So before I pull this one, I've changed the end of this punch to a finer end because I can see these this sort of bulging around the bend here. See if I can knock those back. The trick, of course, is not to dent the bodywork. Let's try pulling on this one now. I've orientated it up and down rather than left to right. It's pulling this dent out that's along there. Oh, and we've reached the limit. There. It's got a huge amount of that dent out now. I think if I give it a little pull above the door there, there's a little very, very slight sunken area there. So I'm going to do that there, see if I can pull that ridge line out even more. That has virtually got all that little dent above that crease line out. You would have to look very closely to see whether or not there was a dent there above that coach line, which I think renders the need to paint the rest of the door completely out of the question. Yeah, I can hardly see that. So, good job. I'm going to pull on this little area again. This crease that was down here has just about disappeared now. I'm using the finer punch on it. I can't feel that crease anymore. That crease down there has gone. So I'm going to pull on this now. So the quote I got to repair this paintwork by this company who shall remain nameless, he told me that he would have to take off the door handle, the mirror, the inside of the door, the lining inside the door to get behind it, and they would have to spray the whole of the door, paint the whole of the door, and also blend the colour into the rear passenger door. I didn't want to do that. I know that it's very difficult to make a colour the same as the car. It might be alright in one light, but in another light you will see the difference. And so what I tried to get this chap to do was to work to one of these coach lines here. And he said, oh no, can't do that, I won't do that. Which to me was a deal breaker. And if it comes round to me having to spray this here, repair it and spray it, then I will keep it to this line here, and I would then be able to just carefully feather it along that edge there and then lacquer the whole area, and you won't see it. But I certainly didn't want the whole door and the rear door sprayed. I'm getting very close to calling this quits. There's going to be a limit to how much I can pull this scratched and dented area out. I'm going to continue working around the outside of this for a bit and then give it another pull. There's no harm in continually having a go at getting that out. It's not doing any further damage.
I spent a lot of time on this repair and I have to say it looks pretty good. but I'm conflicted as to whether I should continue to do even more. I've got most of the dent out, and I've used a small brush to touch in the scratches that the concrete pot made, but I'm wondering whether or not to carry on with this or leave it as it is. Judge for yourself. From several yards away, unless you knew where you were looking, you wouldn't see that repair. I've managed to touch it up with cesium blue. So I'm just wondering whether or not I should actually just use some filler. I'd make sure there are no high spots in this at all, because I've got this coach line here I can finish it to. Since I repaired it, there's no kink at all in that coach line there, so I think I can just finish any paintwork underneath there. And I would use some coach painter's lacquer to give it a shine afterwards. I may do that, but I'll see. I might do it just for the crack.